Do I really have to watch a Marvel movie?
But the cure. It's a curse.
Damn it. Full disclosure, I did not want to do this. I have not actively followed the MCU in years. I only occasionally peek my head back in whenever they let Taika Waititi do his thing. But I did get a lot of requests for this one, and then the internet trolled Sony into thinking Morbius was popular enough for a re-release in theaters by memeing too hard, which led to it flopping twice. So at that point I figured I should really just bite the bullet and get it over with. But really, what is wrong with Morbius? Aside from the lead being played by totally not a cult leader Jared Leto, and the fact that it's one of those movies that is so bad that it gets the entire internet to agree on something for a week. There is a lot wrong with this movie. Though if you can just turn your brain off and want to watch some actually rather pretty fight scenes, then you can probably have some fun with it. These smoke-like effects are actually really nice to look at. The story, though, follows the titular Dr. Michael Morbius. Now, I don't actually mind that his name is Michael Morbius, or I wouldn't if the MCU actually leaned into the fun camp aspect of comic books that allows for names like that to exist. Mikey Boy here has a rare blood disease and has spent his entire career trying to find a cure for it. During the course of this, he apparently invented artificial blood, which revolutionized the field of blood transfusions forever, and got a Nobel Prize for it. Except he turned it down because what? It wasn't for curing his disease? My guy, you have literally saved so many people's lives with this one invention? Man, that imposter syndrome hit you hard, didn't it? Also, yes, there are current synthetic blood alternatives in our actual real world, but the main issue with all of those is we haven't figured out how to make them oxygen-carrying yet, which somewhat limits their use. Now, I have nothing against storylines wherein a character takes medication or gets surgery or literally any kind of treatment that is realistic for the setting, and as a result their disability either gets better or heals over time, because temporary disabilities exist, as do conditions that fluctuate over time. Most of the time, I have problems with settings that imply that disability is completely eradicated. My main problem is that the vast majority of disabled representation ends up either with a miracle cure that comes out of left field and is supposed to solve the character's problems instantly and permanently, with no side effects, or just death. Magical insta-healing cure-alls feel hollow and pointless, and most of the times aren't even given to characters with temporary disabilities, but those whose disabilities were initially portrayed as permanent, and that's then portrayed as something aspirational, or the best thing that could ever happen to said character, which feeds into already established ideas about us and our continued treatment as either problems or tragically resilient heroes just for living our lives. Aside from that, most of the time, the insta-heal is tacked on at the end with little to no build-up, and ends up feeling just as pointless and random as any other last-second Deus Ex Machina. Given all of that, it might not come as a complete surprise that I'm not, actually, mortally offended by the thought of a doctor with an illness leading to disability looking for a cure to said illness. Calling what happened in this movie a cure at all, though, feels disingenuous at best. And I don't say that because it's actually a curse or whatever. I say it because the effects are temporary. So, what happens is that Dr. Morbius, while working on his cure, finds a serum that seems to work, and bulldozes straight through to human trials in such a short amount of time that even I, as a layperson, am sitting here thinking that this cannot possibly be a good idea. Turns out it's not, and because this is the world of comic book science, injecting yourself with vampire bat DNA turns you into a vampire. Michael is extremely unhappy about this turn of events because during his turning he went on a rampage and killed the hired guns working on the ship that he and his research partner did the experiment on. But on the other hand, he is alive and doing extremely well. I don't know why vampire bat DNA took him from emaciated to jacked, but it's a superhero movie, so we're moving on. The only problem is if he doesn't drink blood regularly, his disease will return with a vengeance. So essentially what he's created is an effective medication regimen, not a cure. I guess they call it a cure because that's more attention-grabbing, but a cure implies a permanent end to the condition, which this is not. That's why, for example, even though we have ways to fight cancer, we don't say that we've cured it even after someone has been declared cancer-free. And here we run into an issue I have with a lot of vampire media. Why human blood? No, actually, why does it have to be human? At the end of the day, we're really just animals. Especially with this movie where the vampires are explicitly based on vampire bats. Vampire bats don't feed on a single species. The common vampire bat, which is what I believe these are, actually isn't very picky at all. They'll basically feed off of any mammal. And the hairy-legged and white-winged vampire bats both actually prefer birds, though they will also feed on mammals. Either way, it's generally not evolutionarily effective for a predator to target a single species, and there is no reason, aside from adding more angst, that a vampire should have to feed on humans exclusively. And then this movie has to go and add a second layer of questions with Michael's artificial blood. This stuff is apparently so revolutionary that it's won a Nobel Prize, but it's not good enough to sustain a vampire long-term? Alright, whatever. I suppose I can accept that it's missing something key here. But seriously, stop being such an edgelord and strike a deal with your local butchers. On its own, this is actually less questionable than I was expecting. While it is certainly a choice to make your disabled hero into a literal blood-sucking parasite, it's not the worst this movie has to offer. The worst comes in the shape of Michael's lifelong friend Milo, our obligatory queer-coded, angry disabled villain, who is, naturally, bitterly jealous of the hero's love interest. I'm serious, the amount of queer-baiting this movie does is unreal. Milo has the same disease as Michael and takes the cure, despite Michael warning him against it. When and how did he do this? I don't know, the movie kind of glossed over that bit. And the moment he has the strength and power to do so, what does he become? A serial killer. Fantastic. Not just any serial killer, though, a disabled serial killer who is keeping his illness at bay by literally draining the blood of good, hard-working Americans. I feel like I'm going nuts. I cannot be the only one who sees this, right? He also targets Martine, that's Michael's love interest, and tries to kill her because, again, jealous queer-coded villain. She doesn't actually die, but the movie doesn't tell you that until the very end, so I spent the entire climax being salty about the main female character getting fridged. In the end, the only way Michael can think to deal with Milo is to put him down, and I am not surprised in the slightest. But that's just the main plotline. There are smaller details to pay attention to here. For starters, this is not a humane way to keep bats. If you're calling this a fish tank for bats, I'm scared to see what kind of aquarium you think is appropriate for fish. Where is the enrichment? Where are the plants, the places to hide, the things they would expect from their natural environment? Where is literally anything other than harsh lights and glass and cramped conditions? This is horrible. If I were these bats, I would not be welcoming this man as a brother. I would be flying out the door as soon as I had even half a chance. Oh, also, as a side note, no, vampire bats are not in the habit of completely exsanguinating their prey. They don't even suck blood, they just lap up what leaks out from their initial bite. But horrible animal enclosures aside, there are actually parts of this movie where we get to see Jared Leto do his best to mimic a disabled person. And it is very awkward to watch. Again, we run up against the debate of casting able-bodied actors to play disabled characters. I know the main argument for casting Jared Leto and Matt Smith in these roles will be that a disabled actor couldn't have done the scenes where Michael and Milo are walking and fighting and all that, but counterpoint, Marvel have used body doubles quite successfully before, and over half of those scenes were probably done by stunt doubles anyway. My main issue with how Michael is portrayed before he becomes a vampire is actually that it is, for someone like me who actually used double crutches in exactly the way Michael does for a long time, extremely uncanny valley. Leto is famous for method acting, which apparently for this movie included moving around with his crutches constantly, but despite that, there is something about his movement that just doesn't look right. And I don't mean in the sense that he's limping, I mean that his steps are out of sync with his crutches, and the way he moves them looks very awkward in places, despite apparently having to strike a deal with the production staff to wheel him to the bathroom in a wheelchair instead of taking 45 minutes to get there on his crutches. Leto apparently didn't manage to make moving with them look natural. On the other hand, there is a small moment where he uses one of his crutches to point rather than removing his hand from the grip, and that's at least true to life. Then there's the banter between Michael and Milo, especially this line.
Listen, if you start quoting The Notebook to me, I am going to stop and hobble very slowly in the opposite direction.
Which is extremely true to how I am with my friends sometimes. It felt so natural that for a second I almost forgot I was watching an able-bodied person pretend to be one of us. Except shortly before that, Michael called himself a cripple. It was shooting back at someone who called him that in a language they clearly didn't expect him to speak, but still, it's a little uncomfortable seeing as no one involved here actually has the right to reclaim that word. Michael would, but Michael isn't real. And I want to know what the fuck costuming was thinking putting him in unlaced shoes. If he can't tie his own shoes, why the absolute hell would he wear shoes with laces? This isn't just lazy, it would actually be dangerous. Why wouldn't he just get slip-ons or shoes with Velcro fastenings? If this is about pride, you can actually get slip-ons that look like they have laces, which would ultimately look better and be safer than this. Like, actually, seriously, what is the point of this? Is the image of the poor, pathetic, disabled doctor who can't even tie his own shoes supposed to... what? Make me feel bad for him? Incite pity? Infantilize him to the audience? Just give him normal, functional shoes that aren't a tripping hazard, and stop being goddamn weirdos about disabled people for like 5 seconds. All of this could have been avoided if they'd just hired a disabled actor. And last but not least, this movie continues the new tradition of Marvel end credits scenes being utterly incomprehensible to anyone who's just here for this one movie, or essentially a mini-trailer. Final verdict? I want my 1 hour and 44 minutes back, Sony. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye!